All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something really cool, how you can combine two pretty powerful longevity tools to create an effect that's way bigger than what either one could do on its own. Okay, so let's dive right in. The whole idea we're exploring here is called the biostacking effect. And the big question is, when it comes to fighting aging, can 1 + 1 actually equal 3? Can you get this outsized result by combining therapies? So to figure this out, we're going to look at two completely different strategies. Now, they're both aiming for rejuvenation, but they work by pulling on totally different levers in your body.
On one side, we've got the Fasting-Mimicking Diet, or FMD. This works on your nutrient-sensing pathways. It basically tricks your body into thinking it's fasting, which kicks on a whole cascade of repair processes. Then on the other side, you have hypoxic therapy, or HH. This one's completely different. It works on your oxygen-sensing pathways, messing with the air you breathe to spark a regenerative response. So you got food and you got air, two very different inputs for the same big goal.
All right, let's start with the fasting-mimicking diet. Now, this thing is an absolute powerhouse for a deep cellular reset. But, and this is super important, we also have to understand where it has its limits.
So, where does FMD really shine? Well, think of it as calling in your body's elite cellular cleanup crew. It cranks up something called macroautophagy, which is just the body's way of recycling old, junky cell parts. It helps clear out all the gunk, like misfolded proteins, that builds up over time. And it can even tweak your epigenetics, which is kind of like the software that tells your genes how to behave. And get this isn't just theory. In actual human trials, people who did just 3 cycles of FMD saw their biological age drop by an average of 2.5 years. That's a measurable rollback of the aging clock.
Pretty amazing, right?
But here's the catch. For all its cleaning power, FMD isn't as good at fixing what you might call the hardware of our cells. It can slow down the fraying of our telomeres, those little protective caps on our DNA, but it doesn't really rebuild them. And yeah, it's great at protecting our DNA, but it can't do much to repair mutations that are already there.
So you see the gap, right? FMD is our master cleaner, but it's not a hardware repair specialist. And that's our cue. This is where our second therapy makes its grand entrance. HH therapy comes in, and it's just the perfect partner. Seriously, it's not just another random tool. It's almost like it was designed specifically to fill in the exact gaps FMD leaves behind. It goes right after those hardware problems we were just talking about.
And here is the proof in the pudding. Look at this number. A major study showed that this kind of oxygen therapy actually increased telomere length by over 20% in older adults. It doesn't just slow the decay, it actively rebuilds them. That's a direct fix for one of FMD's big weaknesses.
And it doesn't stop there. The same protocol is also a powerful senolytic, which is a fancy way of saying it clears out senescent cells. You've probably heard of these. They're often called zombie cells. They're old cells that just hang around causing trouble. Well, HH therapy was shown to clear out as much as 37% of them. That's a huge deal.
Okay, so you can see how the pieces are starting to fit together. But here's where it gets really clever. With biostacking, it's not just what you do, it's all about when you do it. The sequence is the secret sauce. First up, when you're actually in the fasting period, your body is in what we'll call the cleanup phase. This is where it's super resilient to stress, and that autophagy process, the cellular recycling, is running at full blast, just clearing out all the junk.
Then the second you start eating again, boom, a switch flips and you enter the rebuild phase. Introducing nutrients again sends this massive signal through your body to fire up stem cells and start regenerating and rebuilding tissue like crazy.
So to get that amazing synergistic effect, you have to time the HH therapy perfectly. The magic window isn't the whole time. You start it near the end of the fast, say on days 4 and 5, and you let it bleed over into the very beginning of the refeeding period on day 6.
When you break it down, it's a brilliant 3-step strategy. First, you use those initial days of FMD to prime the system, get that deep cleaning started. Then, you bring in the HH therapy to amplify that cleanup and get even more gunk out. And finally, you carry that therapy into the refeeding period to supercharge the body's natural rebuilding surge. It's a perfect 1-2-3 punch.
Okay, so let's geek out for a second. Let's go a level deeper. How does this synergy actually work on a molecular level? Well, it turns out there's a master regenerative switch getting flipped.
It all comes down to this really amazing protein called FOXO3, and you can think of it as having 2 totally different jobs depending on its environment. When oxygen is normal, it's the maintenance manager. Its job is to keep things stable, preserve stem cells. But when you put it in a low-oxygen environment, it becomes the regenerative architect, actively coordinating repair and rebuilding.
And this table just spells it all out. Just focus on that third line, the beta-catenin interaction. Beta-catenin is another key protein for regeneration. Normally, FOXO3 actually gets in its way, it blocks it. But under the low oxygen conditions you get from HH therapy, bam, it switches from an enemy to a friend. They team up and the whole system shifts from just preserving itself to actively repairing itself.
And this quote really sums it all up beautifully. The key thing to get is that the low oxygen environment doesn't just nudge FOXO3 into action. It completely transforms its job. It flips a switch, turning it from a simple preserver into a master builder. Basically, rewriting the cellular software to wake up dormant stem cells and put them to work.
And that just leaves us with a really powerful final thought, doesn't it? This whole incredible synergy, it didn't come from some new fancy drug. It was unlocked just by strategically timing two therapies we already have to change the biological context. It really makes you wonder, what other incredible health benefits are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to find the right combination at just the right time?